Well, hope you're enjoying your weekend. You're watching Weekly News Highlights, where we bring you some of the biggest stories that made the headlines this week. I'm Song Yoo-jin, coming to you from Arirang's virtual studio. President Yoon Suk Yeol attended the annual NATO summit for the third consecutive year, a first for a Korean president. We have a wrap-up of his discussions with global leaders and the key takeaways from the summit. They're lighter, thinner, and smarter. Samsung Electronics unveiled its latest foldable smartphones in Paris, France. We'll explore some of the new upgrades in both software and hardware. Finally, Team Korea athletes gathered in Seoul on Tuesday for the inaugural ceremony of the national team heading to the Paris 2024 Olympics. We'll hear from some of the athletes about their determination and aspirations for the upcoming games. We begin this week with the NATO summit that took place in Washington, D.C. from Tuesday to Thursday. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol, during his two-day visit to the American capital, sat down with more than 10 leaders on the sidelines of the summit, including U.S. President Joe Biden, where the allies signed a new guideline for nuclear deterrence on the Korean peninsula. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Suk Yeol and U.S. President Joe Biden welcomed the signing of Seoul and Washington's guidelines on nuclear deterrence and operations on the Korean peninsula, opening doors to, quote, conventional nuclear integration between the two countries. This came on Thursday during a bilateral meeting between the two leaders at the sidelines of the NATO summit in Washington, D.C.
Conventional nuclear integration means combining nuclear and conventional weapons. In other words, U.S. nuclear assets and South Korea's advanced conventional strategy will be combined to deter and respond to North Korea's nuclear weapons.
This also indicates that U.S. nuclear assets that can deter North Korea's nuclear threats will be deployed to missions on the Korean peninsula during both peacetime and wartime. Also, South Korea will be involved in decision-making processes of nuclear deterrence operations, whereas before all decisions were made by the U.S. Since the two countries first established the Nuclear Consultative Group last year, 2 rounds of training have already been provided to South Korean personnel for a better understanding of U.S. nuclear operations.
Through the adoption of these joint guidelines, a comprehensive Korea-U.S. integrated deterrence system has been established. This elevates the Korea-U.S. alliance, which has traditionally been based on conventional forces, to a truly nuclear-based alliance.
Further bolstering South Korea's security cooperation with like-minded countries, Yoon also met with the leaders of the United Kingdom, Norway, Poland, and Luxembourg on Thursday before leaving for Seoul. These sideline meetings were part of more than 10 that Yoon squeezed in during his 2-day trip to Washington, D.C. While security was largely a shared theme for the meetings, President Yoon discussed economic cooperation with talking points customized for each nation, such as nuclear energy cooperation with the Czech Republic and Sweden, as well as defense industry cooperation with Germany.
President Yoon emphasized to President Pavel that South Korea possesses the world's best construction capabilities and overwhelming price competitiveness. He stressed that if South Korea is selected as the contractor, it would significantly contribute to the development of the nuclear power sector in the Czech Republic.
Other key industries discussed with European partners were critical minerals and semiconductor production. The top office says that the bilaterals were used to, quote, reinforce the stepping stones for the nation's companies, and it also added that it hopes that these face-to-face opportunities lead to a boost in the nation's economy and ultimately improve the daily living of the people in South Korea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
And at the NATO summit, President Yoon emphasized the need for cross-regional cooperation between Indo-Pacific and Atlantic allies, highlighting growing global concerns over military cooperation between Russia and North Korea. We turn to our senior presidential office correspondent, Oh Soo-young, for more.
South Korea will double its non-lethal support for Ukraine and increase its military cooperation with NATO as President Yoon Suk Yeol issues an urgent call to counter Russia and North Korea's military threat to Europe and the Indo-Pacific. On Thursday, the South Korean leader attended the annual NATO summit for the 3rd consecutive year, along with other Indo-Pacific partner countries, Japan, Australia and New Zealand, as the so-called IP4. Speaking at the session for NATO allies and partners, President Yoon said that value-based cooperation between NATO and the Indo-Pacific is an urgent call of the times to uphold global freedom and prosperity after Russia and North Korea last month forged a treaty on military and economic cooperation. According to US officials, Pyongyang has already supplied Moscow with around 11,000 containers of ammunition. Yoon said that it is due to enablers like North Korea that the Ukraine war has been lengthened, and warned that military and economic support from Russia to North Korea would exacerbate security threats to the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region. He stressed the need for overwhelming deterrence and also called for the power of cooperation between the Indo-Pacific and Europe to establish peace in Ukraine and to support its reconstruction efforts. In this regard, Yoon announced South Korea will double its contribution to the NATO Ukraine Trust Fund in 2025 to $24 million, up from $12 million this year. While Yoon said on Monday that South Korea could provide lethal support to Kyiv depending on the level of Moscow and Pyongyang's military cooperation, the NATO Trust Fund provides non-lethal military supplies to Ukraine. South Korea and NATO will also increase information sharing regarding North Korea-made weapons and those used against Ukraine, helping them discuss more elaborate countermeasures to the Russian-North Korea axis. Seoul and Brussels will further ramp up military interoperability through the mutual recognition of airworthiness certification. The South Korean leader and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed these developments as they met on Thursday morning.
NATO's airworthiness certificate officially recognizes the flight safety of South Korea's domestically certified aircraft. South Korea is the first Asian country to sign such an agreement with Brussels. The certification is expected to facilitate aircraft exports and accelerate defence cooperation between the two sides in the aviation sector.
As Yoon gathered with other IP4 leaders, the minilateral group jointly condemned the Russia-North Korea treaty as a grave threat to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific and Europe. They also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and offered their united support for Ukraine's sovereignty. Based on their value-based solidarity, the South Korean leader further suggested the IP4 also expand their scope of cooperation to address the Global South, maritime security, cybersecurity, non-proliferation and counter-terrorism.
Through participation in the NATO summit, South Korea has enhanced its own security as well as global security cooperation. NATO's focus on the role of IP4, especially South Korea, has been emphasised, and many leaders resonated with President Yoon's remarks, highlighting the need for cooperation with Seoul to strengthen solidarity between the Indo-Pacific region and the Atlantic.
Going forward, with the boundaries blurring between Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security in the face of new complex threats and challenges, Seoul and Washington officials say they hope to institutionalize the cooperation between NATO and IP4 countries, building on their flagship projects on supporting Ukraine, cyber defense and artificial intelligence. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Continuing our NATO summit coverage, the 32 member states of the Security Alliance issued a joint declaration criticizing China and North Korea's military cooperation with Russia. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji reports on the potential impact this could have, specifically on Northeast Asia.
The leaders of 32 NATO member states have issued a joint declaration, which strongly condemns North Korea's arms cooperation with Russia, as well as China's efforts to support Moscow with military supplies. Calling China the decisive enabler in the war, they urged the country to cease all material and political support to Russia's war efforts, adding that it has become a large-scale supporter of Moscow's defense industrial base. This is the first time that the Western military alliance has publicly denounced China's military support for Russia.
Not only are Iran and North Korea important when it comes to enabling Russia's war aggression against Ukraine, but China is the main enabler because, as you refer to, they are delivering the tools, the dual-use equipment, the microelectronics, everything Russia needs to build the missiles, the bombs, the aircraft, and all the other systems they use against Ukraine.
Beijing dismissed the criticism, saying that parts of the joint statement related to China are full of lies and smears, and warned the alliance to stay out of Asia. The South Korean government said it welcomes the joint declaration that includes strong condemnation of Pyongyang's export of artillery shells and ballistic missiles to Moscow, highlighting once again that the regime's move is a violation of UN Security Council resolutions.
We believe that the 32 NATO member states voicing their opposition to illegal arms trade and the strengthening of military and economic cooperation between Russia and North Korea sends a strong message to both countries, based on the fact that the security of Europe and Asia are interconnected.
One expert on North Korea says NATO's moves are aimed at isolating China, North Korea, and Russia.
I think this will further solidify tensions between the US, South Korea, and Japan against North Korea, China, and Russia regarding the situation on the Korean Peninsula and other regional issues in Northeast Asia.
Wednesday's joint declaration comes as European leaders are set to sit down with the leaders of 4 Asia-Pacific nations, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, for talks in Washington on Thursday local time. 배은지, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Hawaii, South Korea is participating in the biennial Rim of the Pacific RIMPAC maritime exercise along with 28 other countries. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung has more on the drill and South Korea's expanded role this year.
The Rim of the Pacific exercise, the world's largest international maritime drill, is currently underway in Hawaii. 29 nations, 40 surface ships, 3 submarines, over 150 aircraft, and more than 25,000 personnel are training in and around the Hawaiian Islands until August 1st. Hosted by the U.S. Third Fleet, the biennial RIMPAC exercise began in 1971 to ensure the safety and security of the world's oceans. RIMPAC 2024 is being held under the theme Partners, Integrated and Prepared. The aim is to build relationships, enhance interoperability, and contribute to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Taking part in this maritime exercise for the 18th time is South Korea. Around 840 sailors and Marines from South Korea arrived in Hawaii last month. The country deployed 2 guided missile destroyers, the Chunmugung Isunsin and Yulgok-I, as well as the Cheonjabong tank landing ship and the Ibomseok submarine. And for the very first time, a South Korean commander is serving as RIMPAC's Deputy Combined Force Maritime Component Commander.
I am successfully carrying out my duties as Deputy Commander of the Combined Forces Maritime Component Command in RIMPAC 2024. Through this exercise, we will raise the status of South Korea's Navy by improving Joint Force Command and performance capabilities.
The commander of U.S. Carrier Strike Group 1, which includes the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier the Carl Vinson, says South Korea's leadership role in RIMPAC sets another great example of interoperability.
Of course, very significant leadership by Captain Moon as the Deputy SIFMIC Commander to help direct all of our naval forces, not just my task force, but the amphibious forces, the maritime patrol forces, and everybody participating in the exercise. So a very significant opportunity and great to see the Republic of Korea in that position.
Visitors from around the world came to Pearl Harbor to tour ships from different parts of the world. Almost 5,000 visited South Korea's vessels.
I always see the ship of Republic of Korea on the Instagram page, and I always admire that. And it's so good to be here in person today and to learn about the history and to be on the ship that is been at RIMPAC since 1990.
South Korea will be taking part in various drills until July 28th. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Hawaii.
South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics unveiled its first ever AI foldable smartphone series during its Unpacked event held in Paris on Wednesday. There, the company also revealed several wearable products, including the Galaxy Ring and Galaxy Watch series. So for more on this, for our weekly focus this week, we have our business correspondent Park Konu joining us in the studio. Welcome, Konu.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you. So Konu, our first question for you is, why was the Galaxy Unpacked event held in Paris this time?
So Samsung reportedly held the event in Paris, the venue for the Olympics, because of its sponsorship deal with the Games, as well as the global attention the event will receive. And as one of the official partners of the Olympics, Samsung plans to distribute exclusive Olympic editions of the new Galaxy Flip 6 to all 17,000 athletes participating. The athletes will be able to have those phones with them on the podium to take selfies. Previously, athletes having any personal belongings with them on the podium was banned, but Samsung made a special request to the International Olympic Committee.
Well, it's really interesting to hear the reasons why the event took place in Paris. But Kwon-woo, I think that what many of our viewers would want to know about is more on the latest Galaxy Z series.
Of course, Yoo-jin. So Samsung Electronics unpacked its slimmest and lightest foldable smartphone series, the Galaxy Z Flip 6 and Fold 6, with added AI features during the event.
And because life-enhancing innovations should be open to all, we've been putting Galaxy AI into the hands of more people around the world. Galaxy AI will be available on 200 million Galaxy devices this year.
AI functions are now available on Samsung's foldable series for the first time and are even stronger than those on the Galaxy 24 series, the company's first AI smartphone released at the beginning of this year. Samsung's foldable phones now provide real-time AI translation for 16 different languages during phone calls on third-party messaging apps, including KakaoTalk and WhatsApp, and even during everyday conversations. By utilizing the dual screens of the new foldable series, the latest on-device AI allows people speaking in different languages to communicate in real time. The AI technology can even create more sophisticated artwork from simple sketches done on your phone.
I really like it because there are so many useful AI functions such as photo editing.
The previous editions were heavy, but the new ones are way lighter, so I like it.
And I think another big question for consumers is how much will these new foldable phones cost? So please tell us about that and also about the other wearable devices that were showcased at the event.
So with stronger durability and a design that reduces creases on the screen when folded, pricing for the Galaxy Z Flip 6 starts at $1,099. The base model Fold 6 will cost $1,899. Also on Wednesday, the Seoul-based tech giant unveiled its Galaxy Ring. The lightweight Galaxy Ring, weighing around 3 grams, allows people to measure and record sleeping patterns, heart rate, and respiration rate. It can be worn daily for a full week on a single charge. The price starts from $399. Other products, including the latest series of the Galaxy Watch and Galaxy Buds, were also revealed at the event. The official release date for all of the products is July 24th.
So with these latest line of products, especially the newest Galaxy Z series, could you tell us the business prospects of Samsung?
So first of all, global technology market research firm Counterpoint predicts that sales for the new foldable phones will jump by around 30% compared to the previous models. While Chinese firm Huawei took top spot in the foldable phone market in the first quarter, experts say Samsung could overtake them.
There were many people pointing out that the previous foldable series was less innovative, but this time they decreased the weight and upgraded the AI. Samsung will easily be able to reclaim its top spot.
And Kwon-woo, Samsung Electronics has a lot of competitors in the field, so could you tell us more about the company's strategies going forward?
Yes, Apple, for example, is planning to release its AI smartphone this September. One expert spoke about aspects Samsung should focus on to win the race.
I can say Samsung is incomparable in terms of technology, but the point is how much the services in the devices can appeal to people, especially the younger generations. Improving technology is, of course, important, but to enhance competitiveness, it's crucial to know what experiences and what kind of impressions the users actually want.
And other experts also point out the fact that foldable phones are quite expensive. So they say it'll be quite important to make those devices much cheaper.
All right, thank you so much for your report today, Kwon-woo.
My pleasure.
Now, back here in Korea, the Bank of Korea held its first monetary policy meeting for the second half of the year, freezing the key interest rate once again. Our finance correspondent Lee Soo-jin analyzes what's behind the central bank's record-long rate freeze.
South Korea's central bank has yet again left its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 3.5%. The decision was announced on Thursday following the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting for the second half of the year.
We have decided to maintain a tightened monetary policy as there is still a need to monitor inflation, as well as the impact of rising household debt and the volatile foreign exchange market.
This is the 12th consecutive time that the BOK has decided to freeze the rate. The base rate was last raised in January 2023 to the current 3.5% and has been left steady since then. The rate freeze decision this month comes despite inflation showing signs of easing. South Korea's Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, rose by 2.4% in June compared to the same month the year before. The rise in consumer prices hovered above 3% at the start of the year before dropping below the 3% mark in April and remaining in the 2% range for 3 consecutive months. And the June figure was the lowest seen in 11 months, inching closer to the target inflation figure of 2%. But ongoing concerns about household debt and the largest ever interest rate gap are deterring the BOK from rate hikes. In June, household loans from 5 major commercial banks in Korea, KB Kookmin, Shinhan, Hana, Uri, and NH Nonghyuk, surged by more than $3.8 billion, the largest on-month rise since July 2021. According to one expert, lowering the interest rate would have exacerbated the current situation.
Chances are people will take out more debt to take an opportunity to buy housing. So it will not only increase household debt, but also probably drive up housing prices, especially in the Seoul metropolitan area.
And the U.S. Central Bank in its most recent June meeting decided unanimously to keep key interest rates at the 5.25 to 5.5% range, marking the 7th consecutive meeting where the Fed has kept its interest rates at the same level. This has left the rate gap between the two countries at its highest ever at 2 percentage points, raising concerns that the South Korean won could continue to weaken against the greenback. And these concerns about household debt and a weakening Korean won are what may delay the BOK's rate cuts, a possibility that was mentioned in an official setting for the first time in nearly 3 years during today's press conference by the governor. Moving forward, the BOK plans to not just monitor inflation, but to also consider the nation's economic growth and financial stability when deciding when to cut interest rates. 이수진, Arirang News.
And another major news on the economic front, South Korea's minimum wage for next year will, for the first time, surpass 10,000 Korean won per hour. The Minimum Wage Commission on Friday voted to set the minimum wage at 10,030 Korean won, or around $7.30 at the current exchange rate. That's an increase of 1.7% from this year. While this is the first time since the minimum wage was introduced in 1988 that it has entered the 10,000 won range, the rise is the second smallest ever. The Minimum Wage Commission will submit the new minimum wage plan to the Labor Ministry, which is expected to confirm it by August 5th. After nearly a 5-month standoff between the Korean government and the medical community over the expansion of medical school admission quotas, the government has taken a step back to resolving the ongoing conflict. Korea's health minister announced on Monday that the plan to suspend the licenses of junior doctors, interns, and residents who participated in the walkout will be abandoned regardless of whether they return to work. The government will also provide special measures to help returning doctors bridge training gaps and obtain specialist licenses on time.
After reviewing feedback from training sites and assessing the current medical field situation, the decision has been made, effective immediately, not to impose administrative penalties on trainee doctors, regardless of their return status.
Since February, more than 90% of Korea's trainee doctors have been on strike, severely impacting university hospital operations. The government has urged training hospitals to finalize the resignation letters of doctors who do not return by July 15th to determine the recruitment quotas for the latter half of the year. However, with no clear signs of the striking doctors returning, concerns are growing about a potential shortage of trainee doctors next year. According to a survey done by the Korea Association of Medical Colleges, 95% of medical students slated to take the annual licensing exam this year have refused to do so. We end up this week with some sports news. South Korean athletes are heading to the Paris 2024 Olympics ahead of the opening ceremony on July 26th. And on Tuesday, Team Korea gathered for the official launch of the national team. Choi So-young brings us the story.
The time for the athletes' hard work to shine is slightly over 2 weeks away. Team Korea gathered on Tuesday for an inaugural ceremony for the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris. The ceremony marks the official launching of the national team, and the former weightlifting star of the Beijing Olympics and now the Vice Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Chang Mi-ran, encouraged all the athletes.
I know how much effort the athletes have put in to get to this point, and I believe that all those hard training hours will lead to great results in this Olympics. I hope all our athletes stay strong.
Prime Minister Han Duk-soo also participated in the ceremony for support.
This Olympics of great significance because the first where athletes and spectators come together since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. Your time is approaching. The whole nation will fervently support all the athletes. The government will also provide full support. To all the athletes, I wish you the best of success.
The more than pentathlon athletes who recently achieved excellent results at the World Championships in China also pledged to do their best to bring pride to the nation.
Of course, we aim for the gold medal. We are sweating and training hard to achieve that goal. I hope that all the effort we have put in will bring good results in the upcoming Paris Olympics.
Yoon Hyun-ji, a judoka competing in her second Olympics, pledged to trust herself and bring joy to the nation.
This is my second Olympics. During the Tokyo Olympics back then, I only focused on preparing to win a medal. However, this time around, regardless of the outcome, I focus on my training without thinking about medal colors. All I can say is that I will do my best.
In the upcoming 2024 Paris Olympics this summer, around 10,500 athletes from 206 countries will compete in 32 sports. Team Korea will comprise 144 athletes to participate in 22 sports, aiming to secure a place in the top 15 overall rankings. Choi So-young, Arirang News.
And that wraps up this week's edition of Weekly News Highlights. Thank you for watching, and from all of us here at Arirang, have a wonderful rest of your weekend.